Hey guys, so for today's watercolor class we'll do a quick and easy version of this. We're going to start by painting an oval using the yellow ochre and crimson mix with a line halfway down. Before that has a chance to dry, we're going to apply a little bit of water to the sides and come in with a burnt sienna and burnt umber mix. Try to use as few brush strokes as possible. So the goal here is it's an exercise in minimal brush strokes. Just adding a little bit of depth and dotting in some color where the nose is using that same burnt sienna, burnt umber mix and coming along the sides of the nose. Use lifting out to lift out the light on the cheekbones. And while we wait for that to dry, we'll wet down the area outside of the head and come in with a mixture of ultramarine blue and burnt umber. So just clear water at first, and then we're going to try and use as few brush strokes as possible here. So use your largest brush for this. Paint in a few ears using burnt umber. And you can darken up the sides of these curls following the same marks that you've put down initially. So just follow the form of each of the main curls as you build up the sides of the hair. Don't worry too much about getting anything perfect here. Again, the goal is just working on our brush strokes and minimizing the amount that we have to use to do this portrait. So test if your portrait is dry. And then you can come in with some glazing. So you'll see you get sharper marks using burnt umber and burnt sienna mixed together. Doing a mark at the bottom of the nose and a little bit of shade around the outside of the eyes. So refer back to the planar head videos to identify these areas. Then coming in with the upper eyelids and the lower eyelids. I'm going to do a few marks for the iris, leaving a gap in the middle for the highlight. And then I'll graduate the sides with some clear water. Adding a little bit more depth on either side of the eyes. Don't worry too much about your face shape here. We'll be able to whittle that down. Then we're going to focus the mouth around the top third of the space between the chin and the bottom of the nose. We'll darken the upper lip because that tends to be in the shade. Instead of doing the lower lip, start by doing the shadow underneath the lower lip. So I'm just going to shade in this area here using glazes and graduated washes. So coming in with washes of color first, then applying clear water to the edges to encourage that to move around. Just refining the shape of the face. Test if the outside of your face is dry enough. If it is, you can start to whittle down the contours. So don't be too dramatic at first when cutting down the face to size. Work your way in using single brush strokes and feather those strokes out to form the neck. It's fine if some of these brush strokes run into the hair because the hair is a darker color, so we can cover that up. So don't panic too much about trying to keep everything within the oval that you've made. Allow the paint to run to the outsides instead of running inwards if it must. I can come in with some darker values now. You can either use black if your paint is totally dry, or like I'm doing here, a mix of ultramarine blue or indigo and burnt umber to get a very dark black, sort of Payne's gray value. I'm going to add a little bit of vermilion to the base of the nose, and I'm also going to use that vermilion to add some depth to the lips. So I'm going to start just building that up with a little bit of red, glazing that over the brown I've already placed down. And then I'm going to graduate the sides of that, so the two sides of the lips, with a little bit of clear water, leaving a highlight on the lower lip. And I'm just adjusting the shape of the face. Sorry about my hair in this video here getting in the way, but just carving that down to size. Your face might be larger or smaller at this point, might be wider, slightly different. Don't worry too much about it. Just as long as the eyes, bottom of nose, and lips are in the proportionate places, it's going to look pretty good. So, for those details, you can look into the previous videos for facial proportions, just for a review. Now I'm going to glaze a little bit of Ultramarine Blue over the whites of the eyes. So a very thin glaze. This does make a big difference. Just building up some finer details around the nose and the reflected light. So if you need to darken up, say, the upper lip, the lower lip, you can do that at this point. You can also add a little bit of vermilion to the cheekbones. So now you can start again, if the paint around the face is dry, further refining the shape of the jawline. Don't rely only on your brown values for this, because you can also use the black of the hair to carve down the outsides of the face. So if it's much too wide, you don't need to make a super wide neck to accommodate. You can just have hair, darker values of hair, coming over towards the center of the neck to carve that down. To soften up any of these brush strokes, apply a little bit of water to the sides, but again, don't forget we're trying to aim for single brush strokes, so think about where your brush stroke is starting and stopping before you start each one. Maybe have a spare sheet of paper to practice them with. And don't panic if a brush stroke goes in the wrong direction. Don't try to fix it either. Just focus on a different area. So it's all kind of redirecting the gaze. You can absolutely make mistakes here. The goal is figuring out how to correct them when they come about. And the way to correct them usually isn't to go back over with more brush strokes. So building up the darker areas on the sides of the neck, just here, just building up the hair. I might have gone a little bit overboard with it, so feel free not to put so much hair in. Darkening it up towards the face. A good thing to do at this point would be to soften the edges of the hair. So around the forehead to get a little bit of shade resting on the upper part of the forehead. So I can see that now. I might come in and do that later. And finally, you can use a fine liner pen to sharpen any details like around the eyes that might have been lost. This is a great solution for sort of saving portraits that have gone in the wrong direction. So a fine liner, just a few sharp marks, can make a huge difference. So just getting in the nostrils, and I'll also get in just the center of the lips, a little bit underneath the lips, and you could leave it here. I'm going to use a little bit of a hake brush. So a larger one than we'll use in class, just because I don't have a smaller one on hand, to play around with some hair effects. But you know, it's completely optional, just for fun. It's a hake brush is a wide, very soft, kind of bristly brush that's used in calligraphy. And I'm using it with no water on it, but dipping it directly into the paint in order to get those little stray hairs. So if you just glaze this over the hair when it's dry, it can create a nice effect of those hairs coming through. So thank you for watching, and I hope this was helpful.